Guys, can you actually imagine that this tiny cottagecore pumpkin build took me 5 months to finish? Let me tell you why. So I initially started off just wanting to tweak the old build that I did over 2 years ago. I think it's still out on my channel. But then when I opened the build up itself, all I could see was the issues with it, and the little tweaks turned into bigger things. So you know how it is as a Sims builder, I had to rebuild this pumpkin house from scratch. And because it took such a long time, I'm going to split this into a 2-part series. And in this first part, I'm going to show you the shell and the interior speed build of the cozy pumpkin cottage. And also based on you guys' feedback, I'm also going to give you some commentary on why it took me so long, the rationale behind the interior design process, and show you how it finally all came together. So with that said, let's get into it. So first thing first, before doing anything, I had to have a mood board, because the last time I did a pumpkin build, I had no mood board whatsoever, and I was just going at it hoping that it would come out okay. And it did come out okay, technically. It's just that I know it could be better, and that's why I wanted to redo this again now. I just found that having a mood board gave me a clearer vision. It also helped me decide the color schemes that I wanted, and also try and rationalize why I'm picking certain color schemes. So you'll see later in the build, I stuck with more earthy kind of tones for the color. For the build, basically, I stuck with more earthy tones. So we're talking about like greens, browns, oranges, yellows, those kind of earthy tones that we see, just because I felt like having any kind of blue, I don't know, aesthetics in there, it's just kind of obvious when you've got orange because it's a complementary color. So I just wanted to stick with the more earthy kind of rustic tones. You'll also see as well that I'm reshaping the pumpkin and trying to resize the pumpkin. And you'll find at the end of this build that I didn't actually use this pumpkin. In the end, I used a different shape because this pumpkin specifically was causing a lot of problems in terms of functionality. It kept moving a lot, and for some reason my sim couldn't get into the bottom bit of the house when that pumpkin was being used on top. So I tried the other pumpkin I used in the original attempt at building this. And I have to admit, I've told you this took 5 months, and I have to tell you why it took 5 months, because after messing around with this pumpkin, imposter syndrome started to kick in. I'm not lying to you guys. And then at the time I was doing this in like October, seasonal obligations came in as well. So I was just like, you know what? Let me just put this on hold. I'll take a creative break and probably come back to it in the following weeks, which those following weeks ended up turning into months. And I always had the build in the back of my head. You know what I'm saying? I always had that build in the back of my head that I need to come back and finish it. But I don't know why. It just took at least 5 months for me to come back and finish the build. I think I just kept getting distracted, to be honest. And I also found it hard to find time at late last year, to actually continue doing sim builds. Thankfully, that's not the case now. But let me get into the actual structure of the build. So it was like really important for me to get the structure down first. And in my time of building, I've learned not to get attached to the aesthetics of a build straight off the bat. I just find if I get the shell done first and all the windows and objects and doors in place, then I can work on the aesthetics later. I used to focus on the aesthetics a lot, but it used to slow me down. And I think that added to me getting overwhelmed a lot of the time. Whereas now, and as you can probably see on screen, I literally just find the furniture I want, lay it out, make sure it's functional, and then I'll adjust the color schemes and whatnot and all that kind of stuff. It really does actually speed up the process. And just a little bit on the rationale behind this, based on my, I think it's the Fairy Apothecary build, that one was designed to be underground. And since doing that, I wanted to try and create that again. So I wanted part of this pumpkin house to be underground. I know it's really weird, but I just like the idea of having it underground. It kind of gives that fantasy, Lord of the Rings, elfin kind of vibe, and it adds to the kind of concept of coziness as well if part of it's underground. But you'll see throughout the video, a lot of the build was taking time because I had to align everything and make sure everything was working as well, because sometimes when you use the, I think it's like Alt, yeah, when you click Alt and then align objects, sometimes they don't always function properly. So I have to admit that took up most of my time with the build, just making sure that things were properly functioning as well and not just looking good aesthetically. And also part of the bathroom as well that I wanted in this place, I didn't want loads of bathrooms to be in this because it's supposed to be cozy and I don't think a big family would live here. I wanted it fairly small, but I knew because of the bathroom's size, because it had to be smaller, I needed lighter colors. I couldn't use dark colors because I think it would be like, it'll just give the impression of being too closed off. And a lot of the spaces are quite small. Like you'll see later in the front room section, it's fairly small and tight, but I think it's cozy, to be honest. And also the chairs, they're actually from the ranch pack, but based on the patterns, I think it works well with that kind of cottage cozy living. And also I wanted to incorporate baskets on top of it in different areas of the house, just to make it look like, okay, the sim likes to cozy up on either a sofa or either a chair, and just add to that kind of cozy vibe. One of the things I really did like doing as well was adding detail to the bathrooms. I don't know why, but it's been one of my favorite things this year when building, just adding different kind of details to the bathroom, like clutter details. So we're talking about like buckets and like even things like toilet paper and toilet brushes. I like adding those kind of things to the bathrooms because it makes it feel like it's more lived in, if that makes sense. Or at least for me, it makes me feel like it's more lived in and it looks more lived in, which also helps the game experience. I don't know, I just like the look of it. I haven't got a fancy way of like putting that. I just like the look of it. It just makes it feel more cozy and realistic. And I think, now please forgive me because I don't know all the technical terms, I think the pack that I'm using in the kitchen as well for the little details and clutter details are, I think it's the kitchen clutter kit. I think that's the name of it. Anyway, that is one of the best packs that I have bought so far in the whole Sims franchise, because there were things that I've always wanted to include in the kitchen, and most of those times before the kit came out, I had to go to CC. Now I love CC, I do love my CC, but it's not always the best when you're trying to do builds, because sometimes if you need to update the CC or not, it won't be there. So a lot of the time my kitchen stuff would go missing before I had the kit. But a lot of that stuff now is in the kit, and it makes, yet again, like the bathroom, it makes the kitchen look more lived in. So I'm talking about little things like the baskets over the fridge, or little books and little jars as well that can be put on the shelves, and that those kind of little details I love, and it just really added to the overall kind of coziness of the cottage, and also just making it look more lived in and filled up, if that makes sense. And there's another thing that I wanted to say as well, which I just was reminded of, the wallpaper. Now I know this wallpaper is not really cottage kind of looking. I know it's not cottage kind of looking, but it is actually one of my favorite wallpapers, and I think it can still be cottagey in my head. I think that's not even a term, but still, it can still be cottagey in my head, because it's still, especially because of the tones that I wanted to use, like the earth tones, it still works, and it's not too loud that it would distract from the cottage vibe, but it is nice enough and earthy enough to like just mix in well with the overall aesthetics. And there's just a couple of things I want to talk about, which was downstairs. So downstairs, underground, we've got like a living room area with all the with all the bookshelves and the chair and the fireplace. It was really essential, even though it was a small space, I wanted to give a kind of warm vibe in there. And for me to do that, I personally feel bookshelves and a big couch and rugs and blankets are essential to achieve that. And also another thing that I really love is the little radiators. I think I got them from the rental pack. I think that's where they come from. But the radiators just add a touch of detail, which is really underestimated. And that's just a side note, not that I'm an expert at building these kind of houses or cluttering houses, because I wouldn't consider myself an expert. But I would suggest to anyone, if you want to make your builds look more lived in, or you want to make them look more cozy, clutter is king. Clutter is king for that kind of stuff. And also, in addition to that, don't rush cluttering your builds either. Even if you have to step away from a build for like a day or two and then come back and clutter it, that's even better than just not cluttering it at all. I'm just saying, that's my personal opinion. I know some people really can't stand cluttering their builds, that's fine, but I am a clutter queen in the Sims build context, to be honest. So that's just a little tip, like, is it tidbit? That's just a little tip I'll give you guys anyway. But for the overall build downstairs, I really did need to have a fireplace. I need to have things on those fireplaces to once again make it look like it was lived in. And a couple of the things I got, they're not from Cottagecore, they're all over the place. They're from different packs, different kits, pretty much different areas, different packs and different kits of The Sims. What can I say? I've got a lot of packs, to be honest. but I just wanted to add little bits of detail on the shelves as well, because in my head I have an idea that the sim that lives here is very introverted and they're like a homebody, and most of the time what they tend to do is basically be at home reading or curling up on the sofa listening to music. They're not out a lot basically. And last but not least, one of the best rooms that I really thought came out well, and it wasn't expected because it was impromptu, was the little laundry room. I wanted to keep it an open door because I didn't want everything closed off, but I really love the laundry room. It is so simple and it was very quick to put together, but I just like the fact of having a little offside room where you have the washing machines and the laundry as well. It just adds to that kind of cozy vibe. And just to finish off once again, like my other build, I have actually been saving my creative energy by putting my custom basically moving boxes in the bedrooms that I want the Sims to live in, just because it gives me a mental note that, okay, these are going to be bedrooms. And also it just helps because when you're actually creating a Sim, they have different vibes and different ideas. So I don't always want the rooms to look the same or have a vibe before I actually create the Sim that's going to live in it. And I found putting in the moving boxes for myself, it really helps, because once I create the Sim I can decide, right, okay, now I want the room to look like this to reflect their personality. I don't know if it matters to you guys, but for me that's what I like to do. And there it is, guys, the interior of my tiny cottagecore pumpkin house. To be honest, I'm glad that I took the extra time, because these little details, like for instance a small TV area and the wreath over the doorway, and also the tiny laundry room, these are like my favorite parts of the whole build. But part 2 is all about the landscaping and final touches. So, you know, like the little bits that actually make the pumpkin build feel alive and lived in. So if you love cozy Sims 4 builds like this and with commentary, then stick around, and you know how it goes, like, subscribe, all that goodness, and I'm gonna see you in part 2, guys. Bye!